If you've been paying attention at all over the last 10, 15, 20 years now, you've heard the term, let them go so they can grow. And there's some amount of truth to it. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to pause right here and say, if you think that I'm about to preach to you on what you should and shouldn't shoot, get set for disappointment, because homie, don't do that. No, there's nothing in my mind that's really much more disgusting than spoiled people like me standing here telling you what you're supposed to shoot. Now, that's just, I find it frankly disgusting. What you do is you shoot whatever animal makes you, the legal animal, that makes you happy, that you can do in an ethical manner. You do that, and you will get nothing but a sincere congratulations from me every single time. But for those who are trying to pass up deer and such, that's saying there's truth to it, but it is nowhere near as concrete as it makes it seem. There's all sorts of things that occur within the buck community that cause these bucks not to grow that next year. Okay, this property that I'm standing on right now is a large one that I manage. Here, guess what ends up happening an awful lot of the times? The buck's racks shrink from going from 3.5 to 4.5 years old. They shrink, stay the same, add a very, very disappointingly small amount of inches, or they explode. Okay. But guess what? Those are 4 different options and only one of them's exploding. And quite honestly, these other 3 combined occur more than the one right here, the explosion. In this case, it's because those 3.5-year-old bucks are competing with 4 and 5.5-year-old bucks here. Okay. They think they're the man. They aren't. They're not ready for primetime players yet. That mature buck, that 4.5, 5.5, and quite honestly, I don't truly consider a buck mature until he's 5.5 years old. That mature buck loses 25 to 30% body weight on average every year during the rut. Okay, and he is the man. All right, now look at that 3.5-year-old buck. He's like that high school kid who thinks he can go toe-to-toe with the college boys. Sorry, son, you can't. You're not there yet. You are not physically, the overwhelming majority of the 3.5-year-old bucks on this property are not physically mature enough. So they literally pound the snot out of themselves during the rut, trying to find those does. They have to work so much harder than those mature bucks. So guess what happens the next year? To a certain extent, you can look at antler production as a simple math formula. X is your inputs, okay? From your input, that's all the nutrition you're able to bring in. Okay. After nutrition, you must subtract just simply, hey, I need this much energy just plain to pump blood throughout my system, to breathe, all that stuff. Now I'm also going to be out there trying to find food. That's going to take energy. Then I'm going to try to find does. That's going to take, if I get in fights, that's even more energy. All this running around, you have to subtract. And then the northern herd, just simply enduring winter is a tough sell for them. On and on and on. These things are subtracted from the amount of nutrition that they ingest. What is left, and the first thing they do in the spring is once they're no longer running that negative energy balance, meaning it takes more energy to get their food than it does to that they actually get out of it. Once you get to spring, guess what they're taking all that energy and putting it towards first? Building their body back up. Those 3.5-year-old bucks that went through heck, their bodies are absolutely trashed. Okay, so they put a lot more energy into building their bodies. Now that buck going from 4.5 to 5.5, he was in great shape. He didn't have to work as hard as that 3.5, so he tends to make a bigger jump. But what if he got hurt during one of those fights? Well, if he got hurt during one of those fights, chances are his rack's going to go down that next year. What if it was a horrific drought and the nutrition, well, if his nutrition is lacking, odds are that it's going to go down next year. Okay. What I'm saying is, if you go ahead and pass bucks with the idea that he's going to be 10, 15, 25, 30 inches bigger next year, get set for a whole bunch of disappointments. Some of them will. but a whole bunch of them won't, because it's not just simply a matter of age.
Final thoughts, brought to you by Huntworth.
There is a hint of truth to let them go so they can grow. Okay, there's 4 different possibilities that occurs. That buck gets hurt. That buck doesn't have the genetics in him. That buck has a nutrition aspect that holds him down. Or he explodes. Okay, that's 1 out of 4. It's not real. It's a little bit more than a 25% chance in reality, but over 50% of the bucks that, I manage bucks year after year after year after year after year. They're free range, but I can tell you that if you're banking on that buck getting X number of inches bigger next year, you're going to be disappointed more than half the time. More than half the time, these bucks are not exploding. They might be adding a few inches. They might be flatlining compared to what they did last year, or way, way, way more than we are led to believe, they actually go down that next year. Now, the nice thing is many of them, if it's an injury, if they're able to recover from that injury, the next year they bump. But know what you're dealing with before you start doing this stuff, or you're going to be disappointed.